Let's give a huge Roots welcome to our guest speaker, Red Kunkle. I can't remember the last time I had another man refer to me as a beautiful man. Kevin, thank you very much. I'm stoked to be back here with you guys. I love being able to partner with local churches kind of on an ongoing basis. And so we had such a great time last year training and then going to Manti. How many of you are here who went on the Manti trip? Raise your hand. Okay, yeah, good crowd here. The danger for me though is that, I take you on this trip last summer. It's like 9 months, maybe a year that I come back and see you. And so, I learned a bunch of names for like 5 days, and then I come back and I see you and I'm like, yeah, I used to know your name. So don't be offended if I don't know your name. In fact, I was thinking of a strategy, a good strategy to use, so that people wouldn't be hurt if I didn't remember their name. So I was thinking like, well, okay, what's the most common Korean last name? And I'll just call everyone by that. So help me out, what's the most common? Kim. Okay, Kim is the first. Okay, I was gonna ask, what's the second most common name? Lee. Okay, so if I call you Kim or Lee, then I probably got you covered. Raise your hand if your last name's Kim or Lee. Oh, look, there we go. There's my strategy. So I'm gonna be like, oh, hey, Kim, And if you look at me funny, I go, I mean Lee. All right. So anyway, that's the danger of coming back. Well, okay. So we want to look at the issue of truth this morning. But before I get into truth, I want to share a personal struggle that I have. Probably you could call it an addiction. It's something I've struggled with for many a year. I actually have a struggle, and I've gone to counseling for it, but I have a struggle for an addiction to ice cream. I'm addicted to ice cream, I'll just admit it in front of you. Are there any other fellow addicts in here? Are you willing to raise your hand? This is a safe place. Okay, fellow addicts, there's a few of you. I actually have a particular agreement with my wife. My wife and I, she kind of handles all the grocery shopping, which is really good for her family, because when I do it, I end up with a bunch of junk. But I have an agreement with her that when I go grocery shopping, I will buy the ice cream for our family. This is the picture of our refrigerator at home. I keep a special stash just for our entire family. In fact, you come to my house any day of the week, go to my freezer, and you'll find probably 10 different kinds of ice cream. Okay, so I go to the grocery store not to buy groceries, but to buy ice cream. And I kind of, as my wife and I kind of went back and forth on this, I said, honey, as the man of the house, I've got to buy the ice cream. Okay? And so I don't know what your grocery store looks like. Our kind of grocery store looks like this, like the refrigerated section. You've got those big kind of glass refrigerated section in the ice cream aisle. And I know when I'm getting closer to the ice cream section, okay? Because I don't know about you, but I hear these angelic voices singing. Right. And so then I'll get in front of the ice cream section, and there's a particular kind of way that I even buy the ice cream. Like I'll go and I'll just stand in front of the ice cream section and just kind of soak it in and meditate on the ice cream, and I'll sit there and I'll stand there for like 2 or 3 hours and just kind of soaking it all in. And but there's a particular kind of ice cream that I will lock in on. Maybe you've seen this kind of ice cream. It's basically where they take like your favorite candy bar and smash it together with like vanilla ice cream. Reese's peanut butter cup ice cream is my absolute favorite. Okay, and the Lord has been so good to us. He's provided it in multiple forms. I mean, actually, as I've been thinking about this, I think this may be the most powerful argument I've ever seen for God's existence. Right? Reese's peanut butter cup ice cream exists, therefore God exists, right? Okay? So just take that in with me. Okay, let's close in prayer. I don't think there's anything else we need to say. Okay, so obviously I have a little addiction here, and so what I want to do is I want to talk about my favorite kind of ice cream. And I want to actually make 2 different claims about Reese's Peanut Butter Cup ice cream that I think will help us think more carefully about truth, okay? So here is the first claim. Reese's Peanut Butter Cup ice cream is delicious. Now, how many of you in here, by show of hands, would raise your hand and you would say that this statement is true? Raise your hand if you think the statement is true. Yes, all the people that love Jesus. Okay. All right, no, wait a second. Put your hands up proudly. Raise your hand. I just want to get a... Huh. It's interesting. There's a lot of people who aren't raising their hands. Okay, put your hands down, godly people. And raise your hand if you think this statement is false. Go ahead and raise your hand. Go ahead, be honest. Be honest. Okay. Do we have Bibles for these folks? Okay, now look, just think about this for a second here. We have a statement that is both true and false at the same time. That seems to be an odd kind of thing, right? How can a statement be true and false at the same time? Now, if you and I were talking about this, how many of you think this Reese's Peanut Butter Cup ice cream is delicious? You think that's false? Raise your hand. Because I want to pick on somebody. Okay, good. All right, yeah, give me your name. Aaron Kim, right? Oh, okay. I'm going to take a shot. Okay, so Aaron, you guys failed me. All right, so Aaron, let's say Aaron and I were talking afterwards. Right? We were talking afterwards about Reese's Peanut Butter Cup ice cream, and Aaron said to me, Brad, Reese's Peanut Butter Cup ice cream is disgusting. Right? Now, like, in all seriousness, when I look at Aaron and go, brother, are you struggling with sin? Is that what's going on here? Or when I look at him and go, you are in danger of the fires of hell. Right? No, if I said something like that to Aaron, you would probably think, I'm crazy. What is wrong with Brett that he's taking ice cream so seriously? It's not that kind of thing. Like, if we disagreed, at the end of the day, I'm going to be like, okay, fine, whatever. You got your favorite flavors. I got my favorite flavors, right? No problem. All right, so think about that for a second. Now, let me make another claim about Reese's Peanut Butter Cup ice cream, okay? Think about this. Reese's Peanut Butter Cup ice cream is a medicine that helps control and cure diabetes. Okay? If you think this statement is true, raise your hand. Yeah, okay, the non-diabetic here. How many of you think this statement's false? Raise your hand. Wait, are you all a bunch of medical doctors here? Yeah, liar. Are you? Yeah, no. You're students. You haven't had the medical training. You haven't, but you feel pretty comfortable saying, hey, this statement is false. Okay? And if you had a friend who thought ice cream cured diabetes, you would go to them and say, no, I think you're wrong. So like, let's say Aaron and I are talking about this, and he's diabetic, and he says, hey, all I'm doing to help control my diabetes is I'm just eating all kinds of Reese's Peanut Butter Cup ice cream. Right? Then I might say to him, well, dude, you shouldn't do that. That's not gonna cure you. Right? And I would try to persuade him. Whereas in the first case, if he didn't like my favorite flavor of ice cream, I wouldn't say you're wrong. In the second case, I would say you're wrong. Okay, so what's the difference between these two kinds of claims? Because the first one we say, hey, we're okay with saying that it's true and false at the same time. But this one we would say, no, this one's either true or false. So what's the difference? Well, think about what's the medicine that helps control diabetes? Insulin, right? So a diabetic is not going to inject ice cream. They're going to inject insulin, okay? So we've got ice cream and insulin, and these two kind of categories help us to understand a very important distinction between truth. So in the first case, when I say Reese's Peanut Butter Cup ice cream is delicious, that claim is what we call a subjective truth claim. It's a subjective truth. And when something is subjective, we simply mean it's true for the person speaking or true for the subject, right? You see the word subject in the word subjective. So subjective truth is something that could be true for me, Brett Kunkle, as a subject, but may not be true for you as a different subject. You're a different person. You have your different preferences. You have your different likes. You have your different opinions. And when it comes to subjective truths, we say that's no problem. That's okay. You can have your truths, and I can have my truths. So here's the key word. When you think of something like ice cream, think of preference. Subjective truths are personal preferences. And so this is where we'd say something may be true for you, but it may not be true for me. Make sense? You understand subjective preferences. So subjective truths are ice cream truths. Think of ice cream. It's merely a personal preference. But if I were to say insulin is a medicine that helps control diabetes, we wouldn't say that's subjective. Right? Like if you went into your doctor and said, "Doctor, I'm feeling really bad," and the doctor runs a bunch of tests and says, "Okay, we have some news for you. You have diabetes, or you have some disease." But then he says, "Hey, good news, we've got a cure. We've got something that's going to help you." And he says, "You've got to inject this medicine." Nobody looks at the doctor and says, "Okay, well, so what else you got for me?" "What do you mean, what else do I got for you?" "You got to inject this medicine." "Well, I don't like needles, so I don't want to take that." Right? The doctor's going to look at you, "Are you crazy? Like, if you don't take this medicine, there's going to be serious consequences." And it doesn't matter what your personal preference is. Right? And so when we talk about medicine, we're not talking about something that's subjectively true. We're talking about something that's objectively true. Right? And objective truth is simply true for the thing itself or true for the object. Okay? Notice there's a difference here between the subject, me, the person, and objects out there. So there's different objects out here. And so when I'm talking about, so if I say Reese's Peanut Butter Cup ice cream is delicious, what's that statement about? It's about me. It's not about the ice cream. It's about my personal preference in the ice cream. If I say Reese's Peanut Butter Cup ice cream is a medicine that helps control diabetes, what is that statement about? It's about the object. It's about the ice cream. Okay? And so an objective truth is something that's true for the thing itself or true for the object. Now here's another way to think of objective truths. Objective truths are things that are true whether you believe them or not. So if insulin is the medicine that helps control diabetes, that's true. If it's objectively true, that's true whether you believe it or not, right? Your beliefs about insulin don't change the nature of insulin. Insulin either works or it doesn't. So another way to define objective truth is it's true whether you believe it or not. Here's another word that we use for objective truth. It's fact. It's fact. And facts are true whether you believe them or not. Okay? All right, so now here's one more distinction to think about. Can subjective truths change? Yeah, they can change, right? I might say today that Reese's Peanut Butter Cup ice cream is delicious. But let's say I just eat too much of it. You know when you eat too much of something, you get sick of it? I could get sick of it in a year and be like, now I think it's disgusting. So that truth could change for me as a subject. Objective truths. Do objective truths change? No. If insulin is a medicine that helps control diabetes, that's true. And it doesn't change. Right? It's fixed. It's a fact. All right. So, do you think you understand the distinction here? Nod your head. This is yes. Okay. All right. Okay. So you got the distinction because you need this distinction because I am giving you a test now. Because you love school, right? And you want another test. So here it is. Here's your test. I'm going to simply put up a statement, and you tell me if the statement is a subjective claim or is it an objective claim? Okay? Easy enough? Here we go. So, if I said to you, that guy's shirt is red, is that statement objective or subjective? Objective, right? That's a claim about an object, the guy's shirt. It's true whether you believe it or not. Like, if you believed his shirt was blue, that doesn't change the fact that his shirt's red, right? Okay, now what if I said, red is the best color? Subjective. That is now something that's dependent upon my personal preferences. Okay, how about this? What if I said 2 plus 2 equals 4? It's an objective claim, okay? What if I said tropical island vacations are the best kind of vacations? Okay, that's subjective, right? Personal preference. What if I said Brett can bench press 350 pounds?
Objective.
Someone just say false? Because that was not an option. This is not true or false, people. This is objective or subjective. Okay, so is that an objective claim or subjective claim?
Objective.
Some are saying, why would you say subject? Why is it objective or subjective? Is the claim itself objective or subjective?
Objective.
It's an objective claim. Now, here's another little thing to remember. An objective claim is either objectively true or objectively false, right? Those are your options. A statement like this is either true or false. And so some of you might not be convinced, right? You're like, well, I don't think you can actually do that, Brett, right? You're not convinced by my steps. And so you might say, well, I think that's false. Okay, that's fine, but it's still an objective claim. It's true or false whether you or I believe it. Now, I may believe it. Let's say I believe I can bench 350 pounds. Well, then you might ask me a follow-up question. You might say, prove it. But notice there's a difference between being able to prove something and knowing whether something's true or false, whether it's true or false. So even if I can't prove this to you, if I can bench 350 pounds, that's objectively true, right? Make sense? You with me? Okay, so now you might say, okay, well, but maybe it's true, maybe it's false, but now prove it. Okay, so then we go down to 24-hour fitness, we go to the gym, we put 350 pounds on the bench press. Boom, I'll show you what's up, right? I'll show you this claim is absolutely false. I cannot bench 350 pounds, okay? So, but it's an objective claim. So here's another thing to remember. Objective claims are either true or false. Subjective claims are neither true or false. They can be true or false for different people at different times, okay? All right, how about this one? Atoms consist of protons, neutrons, and electrons. That's an objective claim, okay? How about this one? What if I said, God exists? Objective or subjective? Objective? Why is this objective? Whether you believe it or not? Well, would that make it subjective? It's true for you because you believe that God exists, right? You're a Christian, you believe that God exists, so it's true for you, isn't it? Or is it objective? Is it objective or subjective? So like, it can't be both, right? Those are mutually exclusive categories. So it can't be subjective and objective at the same time. It has to be one or the other. Okay, let me put up another statement. What do you think about this? What if I said Jesus is the only way to God and the Jews are wrong about him? They're wrong about his identity. Is that objective or subjective? Oh, subjective? Objective? How many of you think objective? Raise your hand. How many of you think subjective? Raise your hand. Okay, how many of you are confused and you don't know? Raise your hand. Okay. Okay, so we've got some disagreement here. Okay. All right. Let's put up another statement. What if I said premarital sex is wrong? It's immoral. Is that objective or subjective? Subjective. Okay, that's subjective. How many of you say that statement's subjective? Raise your hand. Okay, how many of you think that statement's objective? Raise your hand. Okay, how many of you are like, I don't know? Raise your hand. Okay. Okay, seems like maybe the majority there thought that one's subjective. Okay, what if we made this claim about abortion? What if we said abortion is wrong? It's wrong for women to have elective abortions, right? Like her life's not in danger, but there's some other factor. It's wrong for her to have an abortion. Is that objective or subjective? Subject. How many think that's subjective? How many think that's objective? Okay. How many are? I don't know. All right. Okay. So we have some disagreement here. Now it seems to me that like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, pretty easy. There was kind of consensus. We got that. We got those right. But we hit 7, and then I started to hear a little disagreement. 8 for sure, 9, 10, lots of disagreement. So what's going on here? Why is there disagreement? Why do you think were 7, 8, 9, and 10 more difficult? And we kind of split. Why is that? Yeah, go for it. Okay, so you're saying, so 7, 8, 9, and 10 comes down to our own opinions. Okay, but now think about it though, like 4, we thought 4 was subjective, right? But we all agreed that it was subjective. But 7, 8, 9, and 10, there was disagreement on whether it was even subjective or objective. So because if you're subjective, you would say, yeah, everyone's got their own opinion. But then other people are saying, no, it's objective. So what is going on? Well, notice something. We switched categories, didn't we? We switched categories. So when we got to 7 and 8, we went to a new category. What category did we go to? Religion, theology. We talked about religion, theology in 7 and 8. 9 and 10, we talked about a different category. What category did we move to in 9 and 10? Morality, right? Ethics. Notice what happens to us. Notice what happens. We start talking about religion and morality, and there's like a switch that gets flipped in our minds. And so notice there was disagreement here, a lot of confusion. Some were like, I'm not even sure what those are. If you think they're subjective, then what you're saying is you think that 7, 8, 9, and 10 are merely personal preferences. It's your personal preference. And so if you took 8 and just kind of played this out, it's kind of like everyone has their own flavor of religious ice cream. The Jews have their flavor of religious ice cream. The Buddhists have their flavor of religious ice cream. The Muslims have their favorite flavor of religious ice cream. And you Christians just have your flavor of religious ice cream. But at the end of the day, you can't say one's true, one's false. You just have to say they're all true for whatever it is you believe that's true for you. That's what you're saying if you think that's subjective. Morality is the same thing. You're saying it's merely subjective. So maybe you personally believe that, but you're saying it's not really wrong for other people. Now, I would actually argue that 7, 8, 9, and 10 are all objective claims. They're objective claims. Okay? And I want to try and explain why, but I just want you to notice what happened to us. Even here in a church where maybe lots of us would say we believe the same things, but I'm trying to get you to probe a little bit deeper about what you believe. And I want you to see that actually we may have some really radically different beliefs about what we believe. It's very different to believe something is objective versus to believe it's subjective. And I would say these 4 statements, 7, 8, 9, and 10, are actually objective claims. They're objective claims. And I'll try to give you some reasons why I think that. And I actually think there's some pretty big consequences. Okay? I think we have been influenced by a culture that tells us that when it comes to 2 categories, particularly when it comes to religion and morality, and I think our culture is even going beyond this now, but especially when it comes to religion and morality, these things are merely subjective. Right? In fact, this is what we know from the data. Soul Searching is a book. It's a study done about American teenagers. And this is how they summarize their findings. They say American youth, like American adults, are nearly without exception profoundly individualistic. The typical bywords are, who am I to judge? If that's what they choose, whatever. Each person decides for himself, and if it works for them, fine. Some teenagers champion the skeptic's view of individual relativistic truth with great relish. Some version of this individualistic subjectivism and relativism is the dominant, assumed viewpoint about religion amongst most contemporary U.S. adolescents. What they're saying is that most U.S. teenagers, when it comes to religion, morality, are very subjectivistic in their thinking. Like, right, who am I to judge? If that works for them, fine. That's where most teenagers are at, and what happens is that influences us. But make no mistake, the ideas that you hold will have consequences. The ideas you hold about truth will have consequences. Let me lay out several of the key consequences to this. Here's consequence number one. If you think that morality is merely subjective, and when we say subjective, that means it's relative to an individual. It just depends on what the individual believes. Then the whole concept of sin is out the door. Right? And I would guess if you are a follower of Christ, if you believe what the Scripture teaches, if you believe the Bible, that you probably have some concept of sin. But think about it. If morality turns out to merely be a personal preference, sin disappears. There's no such thing as sin. Here's how C.S. Lewis puts it. Lewis said, "It is after you have realized that there is a moral law." Now, when he says there is a moral law, he means it in an objective sense. It's after you realize there's a moral law and a power behind that law, right, God, and that you have broken the law and put yourself wrong with that power, it is after this, and not a moment sooner, that Christianity begins to talk. Okay, what is Lewis saying here? Well, think about it. Someone define for me, what is sin? What is sin? What's a simple definition of sin? Okay, disobeying God. Okay, and to disobey God specifically means to disobey His moral law. So sin would be the breaking of God's moral law. Now, but think about that statement. Sin is the breaking of God's moral law. Is that an objective claim or a subjective claim? That's an objective claim, right? And so sin is an objective thing. But sin requires that we believe that God has a moral law or a moral standard. Are you tracking with me? So that means God's moral law is objective. Sin is breaking that objective standard. It's not a subjective preference, because then it's no longer God's moral law. It's what I decide, right? For something to be subjective, it's dependent upon me. It's my personal preference. So now let's take, and I kind of gave you maybe a little an example, abortion or premarital sex. But let's just take something like murder. Is it wrong to murder people for no reason? Is it wrong to murder people for fun? Okay. Like one person said yes. You're kind of scaring me. Yeah. Or you were just thinking, oh, it's so obvious, right? Why even answer? But is it wrong to murder people with no reason? Yes, that's wrong. Is it wrong just because you believe it? Or is it wrong no matter what you believe? It's wrong no matter what you believe, right? Because the serial killer might think it's okay to murder people. In fact, that's what serial killers will say. Hey, this was fine. This was fine for me. But just because a serial killer thinks it's okay to murder people, do we say, oh, well, that's fine. That's your personal preference. Go do it. Of course not. Of course not. You see? Now, the concept of sin is that you break God's moral law. But that means that you must believe that God's moral law is objective. If there is no objective moral law and everything is just merely a personal preference, guess what? There's no such thing as sin. And if there's no such thing as sin, guess what? There's no such thing as the gospel. Because the gospel is good news, isn't it? Well, what's the bad news? The bad news is that you and I are sinners. Now think about pause for a second. We're not just kind of having, some kind of intellectual kind of exercise here. Do you see how important ideas are? So let's say we live in a culture where most of the people in our culture think that there's not really sin, that morality is just a personal preference. And you go to them and you say, Jesus died on the cross for your sins. Is that really going to register with them very well? No, there's going to be confusion because they don't even believe in sin. So why would Jesus have to die for something that's a personal preference? You see? And so the ideas that dominate our culture have an influence. for those who are followers of Christ. That's not the only consequence. Consequence number 2, relativism undermines our mission. What is our mission as the Church of Jesus Christ? Say that aloud. Spread the gospel, right? What's the Great Commission? It's found in what book of the Bible? Matthew, what chapter? 28, verses 19 and 20. Right? Matthew 28, we have Jesus laying out the Great Commission. And the Great Commission is that we go and make disciples of all nations. So that requires us taking the message of Christianity and then going and proclaiming that to other people. Now, is our message objective or subjective? So, here's another way to put it. Is Christianity merely one flavor of religious ice cream? Because if Christianity is just one flavor of religious ice cream, guess what? You're not going to be very motivated to take that message to other people, especially when they disagree with you. So, for instance, let's play this out here. How many of you would be willing to create a track or some kind of brochure that talked about your favorite flavor of ice cream? And then take that into like a Baskin Robbins or some kind of ice cream store and start passing that out. Like if I made a track that said, on the front of it, it said Reese's Peanut Butter Cup Ice Cream is the one true flavor. Right? Would I then start going in and passing that out? Or, I go into like Baskin Robbins and I'm going to order Reese's Peanut Butter Cup Ice Cream. But I see like a guy down the way, right? Maybe it's Aaron, right? And he's ordering mint chocolate chip. Do I go up to him and say, hey, excuse me, sir, I just wanted to point out to you that you're ordering the wrong flavor. Come here, let me show you the one true flavor, right? You're not going to do that. You're not going to do that because it's merely a personal preference. It's merely a personal preference. But if you and I think that our religious claims, if we think the claim that God exists is merely a personal preference, it's just another flavor of ice cream. If we think the claim that Jesus, the Jews are wrong about Jesus, that Jesus is the only way and the Jews are wrong about it, if we think that's ice cream, if you think that's subjective, do you see how that will strip you of motivation to go proclaim the gospel to other people? Think about it. When it comes to ice cream, I don't try to convert you. I don't try to argue with you that my flavor is right and yours is wrong. We don't even talk about ice cream flavors in terms of right and wrong, do we? We talk in terms of what we like. And so if you said, I don't like Reese's Peanut Butter Cup ice cream, I wouldn't say, well, you're wrong. I would say, well, have you tried it? Come try it. Maybe you'll like it. And if you try it and you don't like it, that's fine. Then I move on. I don't spend the rest of my life trying to convince you, right? Think about how we sometimes kind of give the gospel. We give the gospel that way. Hey, come try my church. You might like it. Come try Christ. He'll do this and that for you. He'll enhance your life. And we try to pitch Jesus in a way that says, hey, he's going to enhance your life. He's going to make you happy. He's going to give you this or that. Try it out. You'll like the benefits. You see how we do that as a church? That's our appeal. Like, hey, come check out Jesus. You might like him. It's kind of like saying, hey, check out Jesus. You might like this religious flavor of ice cream. If the person says, oh, well, no, I'm a Buddhist, or I'm a Muslim, or I'm an atheist, or whatever. Okay, well, that's fine. I'll move on. Because we approach the gospel as though it's ice cream. It's merely a subjective preference, and it undermines our mission. This is why the majority of Christians, I think this is one of the huge reasons why the majority of Christians don't share their faith. They don't proclaim the truth. Now, if you want a clear contrast from today's Christian message, just read the book of Acts. Read the book of Acts and listen to how Peter and John and Paul proclaim the message of Christ. They didn't say, hey, come try Jesus, you might like him. That wasn't the message. So, relativism, the subjectivism, will undermine us from going and proclaiming the gospel. Okay? Now, think about it. If you think Jesus is like ice cream, or if you think Jesus is like a medicine, and if you don't have him, you'll die, do you think that would change the way you approach this? Very different. Objective or subjective. Okay, relativism undermines justice because it undermines morality. A lot of people in your generation talk about justice. We're concerned about justice. But look, justice assumes that there's some moral standard. So let's take a popular justice issue. Something like, human sex trafficking. Right? Is it wrong to traffic women and young children for sexual purposes? Is it wrong to traffic that? Well, how can you say yes? You can only say something's wrong or something's evil if you have some standard of goodness. But relativism, subjectivism, relativism says, subjectivism says there is no standard. So justice is undermined. Okay? Consequence 4, it makes religion irrelevant. If you think that your religious views, your views about God, your views about the Bible, your views about Christ are merely subjective, this is going to cut your faith off from very important parts of your life. Let me kind of play this out for you. I want you to imagine, kind of your mind is like a 2-story house, okay? Your mind is a 2-story house, and the American mind typically is divided into 2 floors. There's the first floor, which we would say is the objective floor, and things that are objective go in that floor. So when it comes to medicine, or doctors, when it comes to science, these kinds of things, law, we put those in the objective floor. Those things belong in the objective floor. That's where we deal with facts and knowledge. But we have another floor, and that's the subjective floor. And that's where our personal preferences go. So I'm guessing your family might have your own family traditions, right? You have the things that you like to do. You have your own family vacations. You have things that we would say are merely personal preferences, and those go in the subjective floor. Right? You wouldn't say that they're facts. You would say they're preferences. And this is how we divide up the world. And most Americans, where do they put religion and morality? The upper floor, right? They put it in the upper floor. And it's not like they thought, okay, I'm going to consciously put this stuff in the upper floor. This is just what they absorb from the culture. So, religion and morality are up here. And what happens is we think, well, there's not a whole lot of interaction between these 2 floors. What's on the second floor stays up there, and what's on the bottom floor stays there. And you keep the things in the second floor out of the first floor. Let me show you how this happens in our culture. Soul searching. They found that young people who were religious, they found that their religion was mostly situated in the background of everyday life. So it was kind of like, hey, they'll go to a religious service, they'll go to church, they'll go to youth group, they may even do some religious practices like devotions. But when they go to school, when they study at the university, when they go to their work, when they go to their job, guess what? All that religious stuff fades to the background. Fades to the background. In fact, this is the way that our culture has made Christianity illegitimate. This is, anyone know who this guy is? Christopher Reeve, right? Former actor, he was the original Superman. But he was in a horrible accident, became a quadriplegic, a horse riding accident, became quadriplegic, and then he began to advocate for different therapies and treatments to try and help cure, right, this kind of thing. And so he was a big advocate for embryo stem cell research, taking stem cells from embryos and using them to try and create cures. And so he's in front of a group of students and professors at Yale University, and listen to what he says. He says, when matters of public policy are debated. Now, think about it. Let's pause here for a second. Public policy, what floor does that go on? Objective floor or subjective floor? Objective floor, right? Public policy law. When matters of public policy are debated, objective floor, no religion should have a seat at the table. I don't object to anyone's religion. I'm a Unitarian myself. We're talking about the promise of science, the ethics of science, not religion. Do you see what he just did? He put science and public policy on the bottom floor, and he said those things are on the bottom floor, and guess what? Religion should have no place at that table. Religion doesn't belong on the first floor. Where does religion go? The second floor. You see how he cut it off? And so that means, the implication is that your religion has nothing to say about law or public policy or science or anything. You have to cut off your faith to go do the other stuff. You want to come down to the first floor and deal with facts? Well, you leave your faith on the second floor. That's personal preference. Are you with me? Do you see what's going on? Let me play another example for you on this. This is a video clip. This is from the vice presidential debate from the last election. Paul Ryan and Joe Biden are debating, and the issue of abortion comes up, and I want you to listen how they talk about this issue. Joe Biden's going to talk about this.
This debate is indeed historic. We have two Catholic candidates, first time on a stage such as this. And I would like to ask you both to tell me what role your religion has played in your own personal views on abortion. Please talk about how you came to that decision. Talk about how your religion played a part in that.
My religion defines who I am, and I've been a practicing Catholic my whole life, and it has particularly informed my social doctrine. Catholic social doctrine talks about taking care of those who can't take care of themselves, people who need help. With regard to abortion, I accept my church's position on abortion as what we call de fide doctrine. Life begins at conception. That's the church's judgment. I accept it in my personal life. But I refuse to impose it on equally devout Christians and Muslims and Jews. I just refuse to impose that on others, unlike my friend here, the congressman. I do not believe that we have a right to tell other people that women, they can't control their body. It's a decision between them and their doctor. In my view, in the Supreme Court, I'm not going to interfere with that.
Okay. Did you see what he did? He said, my church, I accept my church's teaching, but he said for my personal life. Right? He actually used a Latin phrase there, de fide. What's de fide? Of faith. Right? So this is a doctrine of faith. He used the word faith, or the phrase of faith, to characterize his views about abortion. My church gives me this view that's a faith view. So what floor did he put it on? Second floor. Because then he said, but what I cannot what? Impose what is a faith view on other people who have different opinions. So all he did is he said, hey, my faith gives me this view, but it's on the second floor. It can't inform public policy. So what does he do? He makes his Catholic faith irrelevant to public policy. You see that? He cuts it off. Now, there's all kinds of problems with this. Number one, it just takes your faith and puts it in the background. Right? For how many of you plan to go to a university and study, a college university? How many of you plan to do that one day? Okay, yeah, the majority of us. Well, here's the challenge you're going to face. If you study science or biology or chemistry or physics or law or psychology or sociology, whatever it is, they're going to tell you to do the same thing. Keep your faith at home. Don't let it come into the classroom. Don't let it inform you. Don't let it help you think about these things. No, keep that private. Keep that private. Now, of course, he's saying, well, I can't impose my views on other people. Well, does he end up imposing his views on other people? Yeah, his view that religion can't be brought into the public square, he will impose on other people. So he's not actually consistent on this. But what I want you to see is how our culture makes your faith irrelevant by cutting it off from all the important things of life. That's why I think Kevin is trying to do such great work by leading you guys through developing a Christian worldview, so that your faith doesn't get cut off from the most important issues of life. Okay? And so, what we want to do is help move your views from this kind of irrelevant, faith is irrelevant kind of view that's in the background of life, to helping move it up and for you to realize that your Christian views are not subjective, but they're objective. They're objective. In fact, let's examine this quickly here. I want to show you one of the problems with this subjective view. Okay, so people will say things like, there's no truth, all truth is relative, all truth is subjective, truth is unknowable, nobody has the truth, right? These are the kind of things our culture says. Now, what's wrong with these claims? Well, let me teach you just a little tactic to help you to see why these views are false, okay? It's what we at Standard Reason call the suicide tactic. It's a way to help see that certain views are false, okay? So, think of suicide, right? What's suicide? It's when your teddy bear cuts his head off, okay? You obviously, suicide is when something kills itself, okay? And so what I want you to do is I want you to relate that to the issue of logic. There is a way that certain ideas kind of kill themselves, so to speak. Okay? We say they're self-refuting. So let me give you some examples of how statements are self-refuting. Okay? So, I may say something like this. All English sentences are false. So I'm like, woo! I went right over a lot of people's heads. Is that an English sentence? Is it false? Okay, yeah, you're feeling the tension here. You're like, well, yeah, that's false. But that's about all English sentences. That itself is an English sentence. If all English sentences are false, then that sentence is false too. You seeing the tension here? Let me give you a couple more. What if I said no sentences are longer than 6 words? Yeah, somebody goes, no sentences are longer than 6 words. Oh my gosh, that's 7! Right? As soon as I've uttered the statement, notice it commits suicide. Right? The statement self-destructs. What if I said to you, all bachelors love their wives? They really do. Like, wait a second. Bachelor is an unmarried male. He can't love his wife because he doesn't have one. You see how the statement self-destructs? It's self-refuting. What if I told you, my poor brother, he's an only child. Like, wait a second. Okay, maybe he wishes he was an only child. What if he's my brother, he's not an only child? Okay? That place is so crowded, no one goes there anymore. Wait, what? You see the self-contradictory nature of the claim? You see how some claims commit suicide? Let me give you a few more examples here. I get a retirement statement every month, and it says this. This page intentionally left blank. Really? Because it looks like you intentionally wrote on it. All right? What about this? The law of non-contradiction. That's what's going on here. The law of non-contradiction. The law of non-contradiction is a basic law of logic, okay? It simply says opposite ideas cannot both be true at the same time and in the same way. And what happens in these claims, you have two opposite ideas that someone's trying to say are true at the same time and in the same way. Okay? I'm going to skip all this in it. This guy, he says, you know what? I've had amnesia for, gosh, as long as I can remember. Oh, what's amnesia? Not remembering. Wait a second. How about this one? You shouldn't tell people they're wrong. You see the self-contradiction? How does that commit suicide? Well, you just ask, well, are you telling me it's wrong to tell people that they're wrong? Yes. Oh, well, you just told me I'm wrong then. Yes, I did. Well, you shouldn't do that, right? You see the contradiction. This is actually a real picture from a real college campus. These people are protesting. Interesting acronym. Protesters opposed to on-campus protests. It's on the college campus. Okay. Thank you, public education. Okay. All right. No. You see the self-contradictory nature of this. Okay, now listen to this.
I want to take another question. There's a gentleman in the red shirt back there. He's had his hand up for a while. Come up to the microphone.
My question's for Deepak and the bishop. Now, you stated before that all belief is a cover-up for insecurity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe that?
Yes.
Thank you.
You catch that? So this guy, Deepak Chopra, this kind of religious guru, he makes the claim that all belief is a cover-up for insecurity. You believe things to cover up your insecurities. And the guy says, do you believe that? He says, yes. So that's a cover-up for your insecurities, right? You see the self-refuting nature of these kind of claims. Okay, so let's take you to this, back to this. There is no truth. Do you see how they commit suicide? Is that true? So there's no truth. Is that true? Someone says, well, all truth is subjective. All truth is relative. All truth is subjective. Is that truth? That all truth is subjective? Is that subjective? Right? Well, you can't know truth. How do you know that? Nobody has a truth. Is that a truth that you have? Right? You see how subjectivism destroys itself. It destroys itself. This is a bad idea. And so I don't want you to buy into that bad idea. Okay? Here's the final claim that I want you to realize. There's one thing you could take from this morning, I want you to take this. That Christianity, Christian mission, the gospel, Christian morality is not subjective. It's objective. It's objectively true. Christianity is objectively true. Do you think the disciples, those men who in the first century experienced the risen Jesus and then go proclaim him to their death, right? These guys are killed for proclaiming Christ. Do you think they thought that Jesus was just another flavor of religious ice cream? Do you think ice cream is worth dying for? No. Only that which is objectively true. Jesus is objectively true. We have good reason to think so. And therefore, Jesus is the only one worth giving our lives to and giving our lives for. And I want you now, for the rest of your life, to figure out why this stuff is objectively true. And let it change you. Let Jesus change you. Let's pray. God, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to know your truth, to study your truth. Thank you for a church like this that cares so much about truth. Thank you for leaders who understand the truth matters. And I pray, God, that these young people would resist the false ideas of our culture, and we'd be convinced of the truth of Christ, the truth of the gospel. I pray that Jesus would not fall to the background of their lives, but would come to the forefront and influence every single aspect of their lives. Help us to be convinced that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And then help that truth to change us. We pray these things in the true name of Jesus.